Welcome to MDV The Blueprint. My guest today is a good friend and an amazing forensic home inspector, Marko Vovk of Ambassador
Destruction Consultants.
Gotcha. So wasn't it Ambassador? Was it always Ambassador?
It was, back when we started, actually we were pioneers. There's only like 3 or 4 home inspectors ever in this town. I happened to be in the beginning. And I want to come up with a name. And I thought ambassador. What is an ambassador? It's like ambassador is A, first part of the alphabet. And the ambassador, he talks to 2 different people, the buyer and the seller. It was perfect. So that's where the name came from.
Gotcha. I did not know that. So Marko, I know you're not one to brag. Why don't you just give me a little bit of your background? How many years you've been in the home inspection business? Your designations, what you do, your expertise.
Sure. Well, I did go to Cleveland State, and I'm a civil engineer, so I got an engineering degree. And I bought houses, and so I was buying houses, and realtors are asking me, hey, what about this and that? And I'm like, well, why don't I just do this for a living too, And so that's where the home inspection came in. And in the meantime, then of course I went and got all types of licenses, and lead and asbestos and radon. And I would travel around and get continuing education on indoor air quality. I knew a great inspector, rest in peace, Mr. Michael Moyer. You remember him?
Oh my God, he was
a great man.
Great inspector.
Oh God.
What did he do with as far as like cities? Did he really start where he would call out different things in cities? Did he start point of sales or city codes?
He had what was called the billing codes, B1, B2, B3, and B4. And that's what I was saying. He got me into the B1, so I started learning about codes,
but they vary for
every city's
city.
different. Yeah, zoning, ordinances, codes are always different. But you still have the basic code. I mean, some like the electrical code changes all the time. I'm not a code. I don't do codes, okay, but it changes all the time. It's always more for safety, So now you have to have a GFIs in every bedroom and arc fault protectors, and every year it changes. Every code changes. Before you know it, we're gonna have the sprinkler systems in our homes. It's getting there. They're gonna make it impossible for builders to build homes. They're gonna be rehabbing a lot of. I don't know if you notice it, but a lot of these old buildings they were abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
They tore a bunch down, but now they're redoing them. Because they have to.
Look at downtown Cleveland with the apartments and the hotels and
It's amazing.
Conversions, right? Condominiums.
Oh, people love that city life too,
Yeah.
Everything's in one spot, And so, so anyways, I always try to strive, and my whole thing was, it was kind of like the more certifications I had, the better I was. Yeah. And it was like, why would I just, take my continuing ed? I used to be part of ASHI, American Society of Home Inspectors.
Uh-huh.
You have to have so many hours. And I was just like, why do I want to learn about boilers every week? Why don't I just become a certified indoor air environmentalist, So I would fly down and do that. And then why don't I become certified to use an X-ray fluorescence analyzer, to test for lead, And so I was all about that. The more pieces of paper, and it actually got crazy because towards the end of, not the end, but let's say 10 years ago, I think I would spend almost 30 days a year on this continuing ed.
No kidding.
And paying for licenses. And it was costing me like $3-4 grand plus 30 days. And then I decided, wait a minute, why do I got to do this? Why don't I just teach classes? So the Jim and Marko show was formed, right?
Did you and Jim ever partner up? Were you guys ever partners in inspections?
No, we were a business. We had a relationship. We helped each other out on big, like he would get like a big building.
And we're speaking of Jim Nemesil.
Jim, he's one of the grandfather home inspectors. Actually, I dedicate his book to four entities, and he happens to be one of them. The book. So, but anyways, we would go around the country, and then instead of taking classes, we would teach the classes, and we came up with all kind of classes for radon. We even had a class called forensic home inspections, and house anomalies, and so we traveled all over, and then that's how we got our continuing ed. So, anyways, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. But how many inspections you think you've done in your career?
Well, I think I'm on this is my 40th year. Can you believe that? 40 years full time. Yeah, it's next 39, but I'm rounding
Yeah,
up.
I get you. I
I'm
did the
rounding up.
same thing.
And I one day I sat down and counted. It was around 18,000 inspections. Yeah, it's a lot. And sure, I had I had an assistant for about 15 years. Dave.
Yep, I remember
Mr.
Dave.
Dave O'Connor used to help me a lot. He was a civil engineer too, and we did a lot more back then. So that kind of added up, and maybe there could have been some buildings in there. I did some high-rise buildings that might have 50 units or something. So some are larger buildings, but 18,000 is probably pretty close. Well, 40 years.
So at 18,000 inspections and all these designations, you're now an author, which
Yeah.
I finished the book last night. Gianni was down in the basement with me, and he was going over something about the stuff. And I got 10 more pages, and I'm going to finish the book. I love the book. I thought it was amazing. I think you are a really talented writer. I mean, it's well written. I found it humorous, completely fascinating, just unbelievable information. It is a must read for anybody that owns a home, is thinking of buying a home. And in my opinion, if you're in the real estate business, you should read this book. Absolutely. And the name of the book, Marco, you can show it on the camera, please.
Is that the right camera?
You want to go to this one? Did you get it? Put it up on mine.
Yeah, fix your toxic home and live longer. And just so you know, the name, that wasn't the name I really wanted. I actually started writing the book in 1997 when I started.
You always said, and I'm not, and after I saw this and reading it, I remember you saying it. It's, I got to write a book someday. I got to, I should write a book. So you have always said it, but you did it, which is incredible. You saw it through, man.
Yeah, I had to get it out.
You think about it in 97. How long does this take you to do?
Well, I started the book. I started a newsletter back then because we didn't have all this computer stuff back then. Okay. So I would send out by mail, like stamps, and I would send out a newsletter called the Ambassador Times. And one of the things in the Ambassador Times was I did every 3 months was called My House is Killing Me, or Your House is Killing You, or something.
Your house is killing you, or something like that.
And I wrote these articles, and I'll never forget. I did it for about a year or two, and I met an individual, and I told him what I was doing, and apparently I never wrote that book, so he did, like 3 years later.
Really?
Yeah. So I could never use my own title. He used it, which is fine because he wrote that book 20 years ago, where I'd waited 20 years.
You waited 20.
So I had to come up with another name, and that's why it says Fix Your Toxic. And by the way, in the last 20 years, our homes have gotten much more toxic for a lot of reasons. Okay, but we can talk about some.
We'll get into it, but let's keep going about the book. So you did you start it in 97, and then
then I had kids. And then before you know it, then I was doing 3 home inspections and got into life, bought some properties. And so it was kind of put on the back burner because I started teaching classes, then doing YouTube.
The YouTube.
Yeah. And then finally it just hit me at my age, last year, 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I'm sorry, I was doing farmers markets because I wanted to break the monotony because I have all my gardens. And then I just realized, Marco, get this book done. COVID hit, the business slowed down. And so I spent about 6 months on it straight until I had it. It was actually done a year ago. And then
But are you jamming away on a computer? Are you just writing it on Word? Are you writing it out longhand?
Oh, no. This book was pretty much about, I try to find everything that could hurt you in your home. And so this book's it should be called A Healthy House, but everyone has a book called Healthy House.
Mm-hmm.
But I added in a lot more to this book about electromagnetic fields and microwaves and, all kind of things. So this is more of a book that's kind of more for your health than, how you could live. Obviously, if you're healthy, you can live longer, right? And so that's what this book was about. But it was also my stories. And you've read the book.
I love the stories, and they're great.
You know a lot of the stories.
One of the stories, when I started reading it, and we'll get into it, I'm like, oh, is this me? And I'm like, oh, no, it's not me. And I'll tell you about the story when in a minute when we get into the book. But I want to go back. The stories are, to me, what makes it so entertaining. that you can recall some of these are even better. So do you sit down and outline and say, here's what I'm going to talk about? Because I just, it's amazing with knowing you and what you do, that I just want to know how you weren't a writer, you're not an author,
No.
but you did this. So it's in your head. I'm going to put this, all my learnings, teachings, experiences. Are you outlining it? Or are you just, like I said, writing away or type? You probably typed it on a software program.
I did. I use Word.
You use Word, and you're just typing.
Yeah. Well, I use Dragon. I learned how to use Dragon. So I would talk, and then I put it into Word, and then I finished the whole book in Word, and then I corrected it in Grammarly
Nice.
Plus. You pay extra for that one, and it was kind of nice. But and then I hired people to look at it. Like real people. There's a lot of money. And they would change it around and bring it back to me, and I looked at it like, okay, this is an editor that does this for a living. And then all of a sudden I was like, but the book was 120,000 words, and there was a lot of like too much repeat and this, and so I got another program, and that was a program that made it all work for me. I used the program first. You have to write your book.
Yeah,
totally.
Which is incredible.
Can't have anybody write your
book.
The ghostwriters don't do that. Okay, for a lot of reasons. A lot of people do ghostwriters. You don't want to do that. And so I got this program called AutoCrit, and I use that. And then AutoCrit. Oh, and what you do is you put it in there chapter, and you compare it to other authors in the industry. And all of a sudden I was like, this book isn't any good. I got to rewrite it. So I rewrote it again twice.
From scratch, you rewrite
it? I used the book I had.
Okay,
and I cut it down 80,000. I got rid of 30,000 words.
Did you really?
Yeah. And it taught me, and then I realized, wow, this is easy. So I'm on my third book now.
And when you say third book, third revisions of this book?
No. I'm not going to do the revision for this book for a year. I'm going to get it out, let people read it until people tell me what they think. But
you're saying this is the third book you've published?
I actually published one like 10 years ago. Don't buy it. It's called the Illustrated Mold Handbook. And that was sold to home inspectors. That was a very expensive book. A lot of color. All my I take a lot of photos. You know that, right?
You do.
And so that was the first book. And that I had another author in there, and the publishing company didn't do a really good job with it. But I have two other books I'm working on, and they're not about homes.
But is this? Are you you're proud of this book?
Oh yeah.
I can tell with the way you talk about it and how passionate it's written.
It's kind of my story.
You should be. Marko, I know you. You are brilliant. You are super entertaining, but you're very misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
You're very misunderstood. People, I get you. And like I said, I find you entertaining. I find you brilliant. I think everything, I buy everything you talk about in the book and in the inspections. But I will say, this could scare the living shit out of some people that are reading it. And that's what I want to get into, is just talking about that.
If you read this book and then look for a house, and you read it with a lot of comprehension, okay, you might not buy a house in certain areas. You may not buy a certain vintage type home. And so I'm not sure, it's a good book if you're living in a home and I better fix this problem. Look, what's that thing next to my neighbor's house? Oh, that's a radon mitigation system. I've been living in my house for 20 years. I better check my house for radon. So this is more of an eye opener. Or like my dog is sick and he's sneezing. Why is he sneezing? He's sick. And I sneeze when the furnace kicks on. Well, just maybe you got too much dust in your home. Maybe when you walk on the carpet and the carpets are old and it picks up a dust plume and your dog happens to be at the 1 foot breathing level. Babies and dogs breathe at between 6 inches and 1 foot, toddlers. Think about this. Your carpets are dirty. You got high humidity. You got dust mites for sure. They're going to pump out fecal pellets, which is 50 times their weight in their little, whatever, they live so many days. And all of a sudden the baby breathes that, the plume of pure poison. And then you wonder why these kids got asthma, why your dog is coughing, why your dog is sick, your cat is sick. And so it's for people that the book is for people that live in a home and you know they get sick, so they see a doctor, but they don't realize maybe, just maybe, they're getting sick in their home. And here's the thing: people don't realize it, but you spend over 75% of your life in your home,
Not crazy.
and 30% of it in your bedroom.
And your bed.
So
Yeah.
where are the most two important parts you got? You don't want to worry about the office lights that flicker and maybe cause brain fog. And you're not worried about the electromagnetic fields or the train. You're in your bedroom, man, 30% of your life. So last thing you want to be is next to a closet that has clothes that you dry cleaned. Breathing that VOCs. You don't want to sit next to your phone charger because it'll mess with your brain. You won't sleep good. And then you spend 70% in your home, living in your home. That's what the book's about. You're living in your home, 70% of your life. Don't think about everything else. And of course, food. You know, I should write a book on food,
Yeah,
but
there you
we're
go.
not going to. You know, but that's. I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
If
you
I
did.
went off topic.
No. You did. So with your home inspector, I've known you for a long time, and I just want to tell a quick story why, you know, when I met you, and whether you remember or not, we're not going to mention names. It was a home in Lakewood, and this has to be going back. I was working for Realty One. I did not have a team, so this has got to be 22 to 25 years ago when I met you, and I didn't know you from Adam. I sold a home in Clifton Park. And at the time, it was like the biggest home I'd ever sold. Beautiful, big old home in Lakewood. And the people that I sold a home to knew you, had a relationship with you, and you came up with Dave. And the listing agent was there. And I'm you know, not being disrespectful for you, but my first meeting of you is this listing agent who I didn't know from Adam said, "You brought this asshole to the house?" And I go, I don't know who he is. Why? I mean, she's like, "You don't know who Marko Vovk is?" I'm like, "No." So she's like just shaking my head. She goes, "This isn't going to end well." That was the first thing she says.
Oh boy.
And then she leaves for the you know, she leaves because it's our inspection and you do the inspection. And I just watched you do your thing. And, you know, Dave was going around doing all the little stuff. You were with the buyer. And I just remember you're walking around and I could perfectly remember this. You're like, and you're smelling stuff. You're smelling stuff. And you do this stuff. And then all of a sudden you go, there's got to be like you couldn't find. You're in the basement, and there was a room built off to the side, and you were like, "There's got to be a unconditioned." Like I think you threw out a crawl space somewhere,
unconditioned space,
an unconditioned space. So this crazy son of a bitch gets in a hazmat suit.
Oh no!
Okay,
Oh,
got in a hazmat suit,
white
suit. Puts on a respirator.
Yeah. Probably.
And he crawls through. It was maybe the half of this table. You crawl in there, take your camera, flashlight. You come out, and you are covered in cobwebs and mud and dirt. And it was just covered in mold, the whole place. Yeah. There was structural damage to it. Long story short, the deal went bust, but
didn't end well. Like it
didn't end well, and that was my first introduction to you.
I'm sorry,
but my point is that you know there was you could have stuck a camera in there, and you knew you knew it was there, and it bothered you. Like you smelled something the minute you walked in that house, and it was you could smell it. It was, but where was it? It was a super clean house and well cared for, but that deal went back, and then we ended up getting something down the road. But same thing. You went into one, and
I was going to say that's a common problem with crawl spaces.
Yes,
and I do a lot of forensic work, and so this woman in Toledo would see a holistic doctor, and every time she sees a holistic doctor, the doctor would say, "You smell like mold." So she went to Cleveland. She found I don't know if you remember Mr. Roby, Jim Roby. He used to do mold
Yeah,
mitigation.
yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace. He was a great friend of mine.
I didn't know he
Actually,
passed.
I also dedicate the book
Yes.
to him for that let me learn a lot about that. And so I went to this home, and sure enough, she had the same kind of crawl space you had. Okay, but you couldn't get to it. Unfortunately, they also had cold air returns that were going through this crawl space, and they weren't sealed. And she was a very prominent person. I counted over 300 sweaters. She was called the sweater lady, is what I called her.
Hmm.
And you could only wear so many sweaters a week. So she had these sweaters everywhere. I'll never forget, I took a sweater, put it in a bag. I took an air test and sent that to a lab and took an air test from the crawl space and found the same species. I don't know, Penicillium, Aspergillus, Ganoderma. I don't know, one of the molds, but they're the same ones. And what was happening is it was sucking the crawl space moisture and mold, dispersing it through the house, and her sweaters were like filters. So her clothes stunk. You ever go to a store and the person in front of you that's paying, they smell musty?
Mm-hmm.
They got a crawl space. They got a house full of mold. Okay, because it's on their clothes. And so I was just trying to elaborate on the house you found and the sweater lady.
So Marco, let's get back to the book and let's talk about particle pollutions and how they get into the air and how they get into into your home.
So that was I wasn't sure I would want to even do that chapter, but I did.
Oh, it can be, if you don't understand it, and don't scare the hell out of everybody, just maybe you can elaborate. This is what it is, and here's what you need to do.
So when I wrote that chapter, it came from me traveling around the country where I was teaching the class with Jim and Marko's show. So I've been all over, okay? And I realized, particles come into the house. That was the first chapter. How do they come in the house? What are bad particles? And so I covered a bunch of stuff, different conditions, like, nuclear power plants. A lot of them, we've had like releases. And like, you ever wonder, well, those particles could come in your house, like 3 Mile Island, David Bessie, Fukushima, then you had the volcanoes, but it wasn't so much the volcanoes, it was the dust. And then that dust would travel. And that's why people's air conditioners 100 miles away were going bad. People living near deserts were getting, depending on what kind of desert, what was in the desert, that would come into the home. And then, of course, we have a lot of people living in the farm country, and farmers spray. Okay, they spray, and that's called drift. Matter of fact, I put the word drift in my little. So nobody knows what that is, but that's part of the living near farmlands, and then and that causes problems in your home. And that I'll never forget. One of the worst cases was I was going across the border, Mexican and Arizona border, driving along the border at night, and the pig farmers, and I don't know if they're doing, maybe beef too, they would aerosolize the urine. They would shoot that up into the sky 300 feet in the middle of the night, and then it would just drift. And like every 50 miles, we drove all night because we were trying to get to Phoenix. And every 50 miles, we almost puked in the car. And then finally the sunrise came up, and we went through like at least 4 places like that. And our car actually was sticky. Okay. And they were shooting this into the sky, and all the thousands of people.
Are they doing it to try to get rid of the smell?
No, that's how they got rid of the urine, and they would just aerosolize it.
And getting away from their space.
Yeah, they have a pond and shoot it in the sky, And so the first chapter had a lot, and also like pig farms and people that are getting sick from that. And so the whole, and then it gets into weather too, certain areas where you don't want to live because of this and that. And so that first chapter is more about bad places, not necessarily bad places, but places that contribute to the pollution in your home.
So those places, let's go back to like suburbia, where the Westlake, the Bay Village, the Lakewoods. Do we still have those same issues around here, or are there other issues that we don't even know are happening?
There are, and the way some of these issues, some of them are kind of dumb, but they're not. Let's say you bought. We're talking about particles, not noise pollution.
We're talking about particles.
Okay. So particles could be like, if you buy a house on a main drag, and all of a sudden you smell, broiled burgers from Burger King. I mean, if you're smelling it in your house, that's getting in your home. Okay. That's not good. Okay. That's particle pollution. Even though you want to smell flame broiled burgers, so I would say you want to find out where you're living. Okay. Another thing is, where your house is located, downstream or upstream. Okay. I have houses when they near the airport. See, people, they added a runway, and all of a sudden the lady's treetops started snapping because they added a new landing. And as the landed, it would cause eddy currents, these whips. Okay, it would snap her treetops.
No
And
kidding.
she had branches all over on top of the roof, put holes in the roof and stuff. And so you might want to see where you're living. And also, you don't want to be like in the airport. I gave an example in the first chapter
Yep.
where they should dump fuel.
I was going to ask you, is that does that happen around here, you think?
You know what? I don't. It probably less and less. But I'll never forget going to barbecue parties at my buddy's house in North Olmsted, and we're sitting there having a party, and you could smell fuel, and they're dumping fuel. So maybe, just maybe, we don't want to be near, takeoff and landing ramps. So to answer your question, yes, we have an airport, trains. Okay, the problem with trains, not so much today, is drift from trains. A train goes by and it would have coal on it. By the time it went from A to B, 30% of that coal's gone. Guess what? It's drifting off the train tracks. So maybe I'm not going to buy a house next to the train tracks, and they're going to be cheaper, obviously. So to answer your question, you have these conditions all over, and you just have to be smart about it.
Some worse than others. Some areas worse than others.
But you also, for example, the house that's not on the lake. Just say, the house that's a quarter mile away from the tracks is going to be, let's just make a number up, 100,000, and the house next to the track is going to be 70. Well, there's a reason for that, but some people, don't know that. So to answer your question, yeah, there is, but not as much. The other big one would be dumps and garbage dumps.
And they're around. You just don't. They're around everywhere.
There was on the Denison Avenue. I'll never forget. I did a home inspection around 60th and Denison, and I'm like in the backyard, and I'm like, oh my God, this smells so bad. And we did inspection on Sunday, didn't smell. And then I think I had to come back to get a raid on. I don't know what the reason it was. It's about 20 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that odor? And I was like, this is horrible. Of course, the inspection was on Sunday, and that's when they bought the house on a Sunday. And so then I got to find this. I'm driving around, and sure enough, dog food factory. And I went into there. I pulled in there, and these trucks were just dumping stuff, you could imagine, right? And I saw rats and whatever, and they were cooking it. And that odor was putrid. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell my clients this. We didn't tell, it's not on the report, So I had to call them back. Say, listen, you live behind a dog food processing plant. It smells really bad.
And that stuff's not public. It's not on the MLS that, hey, by the way.
And so, and then think about this. You get finagled into buying that home. You finally realize, that's just dog food. It could be dust from an excavation company, and they're making a pile, and the dust happens to be hitting your house all the time. Whatever. I got a cottage in Huron, and I used to have the lime plant, and I couldn't figure out why there's dust in my house all the time after we clean it. Well, the lime plant's shut down, and so these people, I told them, they went back. Oh my God. Thank God. But if they bought that house, think about it, they'd have to try to sell that house also on a Sunday with a home inspection on a Sunday, because no one's going to buy a house that smells like dog food. So, yes, there are places. You just have to do your homework. Don't just blindly buy something. Think about it. And you know what? And when you look at that house, go back. Go back at night. Go back in the morning. Go back traffic hour. Check out the weekend. Park your car and just sit there, listen, look, and then get on a computer, Google Earth and see, oh, what's that? That's a garbage dump. What's that? And so maybe I'm getting too involved in your question.
No. But from this, so we're talking about particle
pollution,
but you also talk about how our homes create particle pollution.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much the whole book. They got another 15 chapters. So I think the second chapter will get into more like like the general things like the bacteria and the molds and the smuts and the fecal pellets from the bugs and the carpets and the humidity. And the biggest thing is in that whole chapter is about dust and the breakdown of products like carpets break down. Sometimes the padding underneath the carpets breaks down, and that transpires up into the house and becomes part of the particle pollution. And some particles are bigger, some are smaller, some float. Like if you burn candles, for example, there's a section on volatile
You're
organic.
not a candle guy
Yeah, no, but
or an air freshener.
no, that would be, those are VOCs, but those are also part of the pollution, and so like carpets probably not a good idea unless you have a very dry home. You're running a dehumidifier.
So for those that have carpets,
Okay.
would you say that there's a time frame that you shouldn't keep carpets more than 5 years, 10 years?
Well, there's a couple other problems with the carpets. The first problem with the carpets is somebody made them and used chemicals to make them.
Sure.
And so, sure, they're going to say there's no outgassing. You ever buy a new car? Ooh, new car smell. New house. Ooh, new house. That's all volatile organic compounds. If you smell fresh, it's not fresh. Air fresheners aren't fresh. There's nothing about fresh in air fresheners. And so the new carpets, first of all, outgas. So like I'll tell people, they go, oh, you got new carpets? Okay, it's a new house. Okay, don't use your air conditioner. What you need to do is keep your windows open. Let's aerate this house for the first year or two. And then maybe, this is kind of crazy, but maybe we shut the house down on hot days and leave it, let the house build up, because the heat will outgas these chemicals from the carpets. It might take a couple of years, right? So now let's say we don't have any more VOCs coming from the carpets, but now we have fibers in the carpets and we have filters. The carpet's a big filter. So the dust goes into the carpet. And matter of fact, in Canada, they did a study on cleaning carpets, and they were testing it for lead. So they took an old carpet, tested it with a HEPA ran it to get lead, and then they washed that carpet. They cleaned it with the machines and all. They had to clean that carpet 13 times before the levels went down to nothing. So carpets are never clean, no matter what. They will never be clean.
Does steam cleaning help? Does it cut down? Does it add more to it because now it's wet and it's drying out?
It depends. Let's say you steam clean, okay? And what are you going to do? Put chemicals into the steam clean? So now we're going to have chemical cleaning, which is another problem. But if we did steam clean and then we HEPA and then we dried and we used dehumidifiers, or we used some type of machine to extract all the moisture, and we could do it quickly enough, fine. But the real problem is people steam clean and their moisture, and then the mold spores start to amplify again. When they amplify, they live in the carpet. It's a great place for them to hang out. And then the dog is shedding, and the dog's is drooling. Man, that's like candy, M&Ms, man, for these things, And so these dust mites are so small, and they're in it, and then they make little pellets, and they're and the pellets break into micros. We're talking micron-sized particles. And then when you vacuum, your vacuum isn't any good. You just kick it up. Now you just aerosolize your carpets. So I would say, no, I'm not a carpet guy. I think the best thing today, because our houses are so tight, our houses can't hold moisture. I would call it the hydro buffer capacity, okay? How much moisture a house can hold. The old days, when 1900s house holds a lot more moisture because of the building products. Today, no moisture at all because they're made out of what? Metal. They're made out of plastics. And so they can't hold the moisture. So we have a lot more problems. And so the carpets are kind of like, they release particles and they also grow particles. I would say wood floors are the way to go. No problem. I would say any laminate floor.
Any laminate.
And then you could micro swift them. Okay.
You're big into micro swifting. You like that?
Well, I don't like the chemical.
You don't like chemicals.
No, but I have Airbnb, so we micro swift everything. And we just, sometimes you use water, or use a wet cloth is good too, but you can clean floors quickly, especially for lead, especially for dust. If you got old house, let's say you've got vermiculite, asbestos or something, it's great because you can see the floor, you can clean the floor. If the dog drools, like, oh, he drooled, I got to clean that up. Whereas you got the carpet, you try to wash the carpet, somebody spills Coke on it, you think you're cleaning it, you ain't clean it. You got dust mite food down there for the dust mites. It's very hard to clean carpets. And same with cloth furniture, no different. And beds, all the stuff is in the book.
But couldn't you argue the point that, like, all these pollutants and stuff in the air and in your house actually helps you build an immune system, and that's you're alive, I'm alive, he's alive. Couldn't that point be made?
I'm not going to argue with that. Yeah. So what you're saying is a little bit of dirt helped our immune systems. And I'm not a doctor. And I do have a disclaimer in the book where it says I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, yep.
I'm not a doctor. Okay. And yes, I agree with you. Our immune systems were better because we were exposed to it. But there's a difference between being exposed to mega millions and billions of dust mite fecal pellets, caused by a tight house with 3 cats and a dog that live indoors, and you don't have air exchanges. It's a whole big. You're getting too much of something. And our old houses also back then breathed a little more. Like I said, the higher buffer capacity of these homes. That means how much moisture these old homes could hold. It could dry in, it could dry out, dry in, dry out. It got wet, it held it. It was a buffer, and dry in, dry out. Today they get wet, they stay wet.
Mhm.
Condensation, mold, outgassing, VOCs. So I would say you're right in a way, but too much. The problem. Here's another problem. It's these people that use chemicals to clean their homes. They wipe they clean their tables with lemon pledge, right? And then my client shows up with a little kid, and she puts Cheerios on the table, and the kids look at his fingers, and he's eating lemon pledge. Okay, and so chemical cleaning is a bad idea.
Obviously, you'll know this. When COVID hit, chemical cleaning went off the charts. I recall go to the grocery store all masked up. I'd come home, I'd take my clothes off on the garage, and I'd bring the food in, and I'd wipe all the food down with
alcohol,
Clorox wipes.
Oh yeah.
And oh my God, I can't believe let me just shower here, wash my whole self down, and everything's wiped down. And then I got to Clorox everything here. And then let me get my light switch. Somebody touched it. Made us crazy.
Oh yeah.
Made us crazy.
Oh, that was the craziest.
Yeah.
Our world went nuts.
Insane. Off the chain crazy.
And now these people, they've been washing their hands, and they're so used to taking alcohol. And wiping their hands all day, and they don't understand what that's doing to them. It's not good for you. And even like some of the masks you'd put on, he's like, "What's that? Oh, that's clean. Oh, that's fresh. Huh? What do you mean that's fresh? I don't know what they make those things with. All volatile organic compounds, cleaning, over cleaning. Why? I mean, people would take fruit and wipe it down with chemicals to clean it. It was an insane time.
But you would have people on the news talking. Well, here's what I would do when I come from the grocery store. You should have it. Your pile here, clean it all down. First, you clean the whole surface up, and then you put it to this pile, and then you clean all that surface up.
Oh,
I mean, it was, people, nobody knew.
And speaking, since you brought up, the big C word, that was another one of the main reasons why I wrote the book. It happened right after that. Okay, during it and after, because what happened during this crazy time of this planet was that everybody moved back home. Okay. And then the parents who, I'm not putting my parents I'm not going to put them in that home because that's a problem. People die in those places. And the kids, can't go to college. So they're in the basement and they're up in the attic. And so you got all these people in the house, and, you can't go out. Someplace you got to stay home. There's no more, you can't go to baseball games. There's everything shut down. You can't go to church. You're in your house. So now you have all these people breathing CO2, extra cooking, less oxygen in the house, more humidity, more showers. And now the carpets are like, oh, thank you. And right. And the kid in the basement, he's downstairs because he can't go to college because he's got to study on the computer. So he's got this computer in a dark space, and he's getting all the poison, the frequencies from the computer because there's no light to interact and balance it out. And he's getting brain fog, and he's next to the furnace, and you got cold air returns causing negative pressure in the basement. The radon gas is coming up. So you got all these people, more people in the house, longer periods. They close the doors, I mean, the only time they get air is when they go out to walk the dog. Thank God they had a dog so they could walk them out, get some fresh air in the house. So that seed time of our life created more people in our home and more pollution. And this book was written right after that because I knew it was time to write this book.
So we know that we have pollutants in our home. I want to touch base on what I do and tell me if I'm on the right path. And this is just the first thing that is always done in my house. And if it gets to 40 degrees today, my wife will open up every window in the house. We don't really run the air conditioning unless it's unbearable. So that any day it's a decent day out, the front door is open, the back door is open for a cross breeze. Every window in the home is open. We never wear shoes in the house. I use those 3M filters and they're changed. I do it 3 times a year. I have my ducts clean, whether they need it or not, probably every 3 years. And I don't know if that's enough. And we do have a little bit of carpet on the second floor. We have a dog. Our vacuums are HEPA vacuums. And I am big on, and I know Johnny is as well, those air filters with the HEPA filters, and they're all over the house. I don't know if they do anything or not, but that's what I do. Am I in the right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I need to write a book just on you because that's perfect.
Perfect. I mean, he keeps
So
them in the
if everybody did what you did, the doctors would be making less money. Okay. First of all, you said the big thing is I open my windows.
Open the windows.
Well, think about it. When you open the windows, you release when you breathe and you cook, you create carbon dioxide, right? So carbon dioxide outside is pretty low. It's like 400 parts per million. And you've got 800. Oh, we just balanced that out. All of a sudden, we're getting more fresher air. Our oxygen levels are better. We're bringing oxygen in, right? And if our house is high humidity goes high vapor pressure, which is a lot of humidity, to low vapor pressure outside. So all of a sudden, the humidity's leaving. You want to lower the humidity in your house because let's say you have a problem with humidity, crawl space. You have ventless. Don't use ventless units, heaters, and things like that. And now, so you're breathing fresh air, right? You don't take your shoes. You take your shoes off.
Always, no shoes in the house.
Where are your shoes at? I did a video at. I did a video at. I don't want to say the place. It's a garbage dump in 98th Street over there, and I did this video because the garbage dump, it's oozing things onto the parking lots. And I have pictures of bubbles, methane and stuff coming up. And all this stuff is people go shopping in a store there. And it's like sticky from the garbage dump. They take those shoes and they go in their car. And then they go in their house. They're bringing that garbage dump in their home. So take your shoes off.
Always.
You have no clue what's on
When
your
the dog
shoes.
comes in, this is how wacky we are. The dog comes in, he gets his paws wiped down. Whether that does anything or not, it's better than, running around mud, dirt, water, but he gets his paws wiped down every time he comes in the house.
Speaking of paws, and this is kind of crazy, and no one's ever written anything about this, but all these cats are outside, right? What do cats do? They lick their paws, right? Now think about it. Old house in Cleveland, around the side of the home, still got wood siding. It got painted 30 times. Nobody used drop cloth, so all the soil around the house is contaminated with lead, soil, and this cat's picking up and licking her paws. And you wonder why your cat's like slow motion. It's lead poison.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because he's licking this point, and so cleaning your dog, you're bringing stuff in from the outside. That's a great idea. Taking your shoes off, and then your HEPA filters, high efficient particle air. That's the greatest thing you could do. HEPA filters pick up 99% of all particulate, and so you're doing everything that you should be doing. Okay, I'm sure we could. Maybe you're still putting lemon pledge on the glass table.
Of course I am.
But other than that, you're doing great. You're
my
doing
wife's
great.
candle girl, and I am plug-in guy, and I know you hate that.
Oh yeah.
And I don't do it all the time, but there's sometimes holidays I want it to smell like pine, so do that.
Yeah.
But I know you hate it, and that I remember being with you on inspections, and as soon as you'd see one and said, they're hiding something in here. These are bad. Don't use these things. You always would say that. What I do want to bring up is you touch on ages of homes, and you talked about today's home in new construction or newer. I don't know what your cutoff would be, is how tight they are and how they don't breathe, and you have to bring the indoor outdoor air makeup, as opposed to older homes that you say would breathe more. Is there more issues in these older homes though, because they were not built like today, and maybe they don't have, I don't think they're they could have foundation issues. with water issues, not having the drain, if there is a sump pump, the insulation issues, as opposed to today's homes that are tighter.
Well, that's a very interesting question. So first of all, let's just new home, old home, almost. Here's the thing: people will buy a house in an area they want to live in. They may like it for the school system. They may need a hospital nearby. It may be they need a lake. Okay, they need a swimming pool, whatever. So they're going to pick a couple areas, whether they're new homes or they may have to buy a new home to be in this certain area because they're near this hospital. Okay, they need it. And so let's just talk about newer homes and we'll generalize. When a house is brand spanking new, you have to understand the houses aren't made of, back then they used to build houses with wood. Okay. Today they build houses with waswood. Okay. I call it waswood because it's
OSB,
made.
all
They used to
particle.
take wood that was very strong, and a lot of termites and wood-boring insects don't even like that wood because it's so hard. They would like the spring wood because it was, and that they would kind of be selective. But today's wood, a lot of the wood is SPF. They grow these things in 20 years. They cut them down. That's why they're warped and they're lighter. And then they make OSB, press board, and they take wood and they chop it up and they put chemicals and energy into it and heat it up. And that's why it's called waswood, right? Now it's got stored potential energy, which is great for mold because mold loves energy. So that's another issue. And plus the outgassing is going to outgas more. So the new houses made of waswood and more VOCs because the paints and lacquers are all outgassing. The new carpets and even the new floors outgas. Okay, the laminate floors and so this house is outgassing. It's like farting. Okay, it's farting, and you're living in a fart. Okay, in a brand new house. So you want to open a few windows, get that fart out of there. And so I would say a new house right off the bat, first 2 years, like you do, open the windows and air it out. In the winter it might get tough because of heat, but you won't get as much outgassing as you would on a hot summer day. From the sun, especially southern exposures beating down. Now, not a new house, but a newer home, well, a lot of that's already outgassed. Okay, so maybe not so much. The problem with the newer home might be you don't want it to leak. You don't want to have ice dams. You don't want to have trapped moisture. You don't want to have condensation, interstitial condensation, because that's going to grow mold. And you're going to walk in that front door. It's going to smell musty because it's hidden mold, And so, yes, you have a moisture problem in those homes because they don't hold as much moisture. They're designed with newer types of products. Old houses, yes, you're right about the old houses too. The foundations are going to break. So now you have a different kind of issue. You have a maintenance issue. The roof is going bad. And back then they also used asbestos. So yeah, you might have some environmental conditions to deal with too. Oil tanks, buried oil tanks, our old farmhouses. And now they went to gas. The tank's still down there, right? And so I would say that you have to look at each situation, new, brand new, old. First, you got to, you're going to buy whatever it is because that's why you're in that neighborhood. You just have to learn about that, deal with it. And you're like, dude, I think you live in a 20 or 30-year-old house.
My house is 29 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a new house.
No, 27 years old.
And you're still opening windows.
Always.
And you feel better, don't you?
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't get sick. And I have to go back, and I don't want to get off topic to my son at Ohio State that is sick all the time because of how gross these houses are. But I'll touch on that later. But I want to go back to these houses. So these older homes, I think people, in these great cities, and you're from Lakewood or River or Bay, you have older homes that need maintenance, like you said. But when you're doing inspections in these neighborhoods, is there a common theme that you see in these houses, or things that have been corrected that were problems in the past?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. It depends on the neighborhood too. Like, so if somebody calls me and they're buying a home, they call me, hey, Marko, we got to come check out my house in Tremont. I'll say, well, oh, is that a new house? Oh yeah, it's new. I'm like, I already know what I'm going to deal with, right? It's going to be one of them 3-story, no elevators. But then, oh no, this is an old house. Like, oh boy, okay. They're the flats, and they're, so sure, the attic's going to be contaminated from whatever was down in the lead smelters, whatever. So, I may say, clean your attic, or don't go in your attic, or, I mean, foundation sandstone. I already know it's going to leak. They didn't have waterproofing systems, but that house does leak, but maybe doesn't cause problems because it dries too, because it can hold more moisture. And so I do see problems in older homes, okay? But I see problems in newer homes too. See, the older homes, we have old materials that are getting used, and new homes, we have new materials that have been tested. So we have defective materials. I mean, remember EIFS,
Yeah.
the synthetic stucco? That was a bad idea. Every house rotted, okay, with the EIFS because they didn't have drainage plans. Then what was another one? Cultured stone. Oh yeah, they made the same mistake twice. So they started putting cultured stone up in these big houses, and they didn't put in a drainage place. So in the front house was stone, and the side
right on the either the OSB or
and
the
it would
plywood.
rot the whole house out. And then we had hardy board, and the hardy board came out initially. And I get in trouble for this one, but they didn't back prime it. And if it wasn't back primed, some of the earlier hardy boards, the surfactants from the back prime would destroy the sheen and the hydrophobic properties of the Tyvek and make it suck in water. So it was a problem with that. And then we had bad roofing systems, like everyone's like spraying their roof. It wasn't bad, but one of the things what I could never understand people cleaning mold off their roofs, so
from the outside.
Yeah, the mold streaking, usually on the south side because it's shaded, and I don't know how you put that mold streaking in the book or not, but
I don't think I saw it.
No, it wasn't in there. See, now I got it added.
Go back and add it.
Well, anyways, so they used to change the roofing shingles, okay, and they would use They would use limestone and things like that, which is she shells, right? And that would it'd be mold food. Now, so the mold was streaking on those homes, right? And so I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What was worse was people cleaning them and falling off them, breaking their necks. Same with the people that like to chip icicles and fall off ladders, So some of the products were bad. Also, we went from gravity heating systems to high efficient units. Okay. And now we have to have proper oxygen. I have a whole chapter on that. You don't have enough oxygen in your house. You're going to have incomplete combustion. You're going to generate carbon monoxide. So yeah, the new products were different. Some were tested long enough, and some failed. Like all those garages they built 30 years ago, they all rotted because they had
all of them.
That fake wood, whatever that cardboard wood. I don't want that's in the book. There's
I know.
All those are rotted because that was a new product. So you got pros and cons on both sides. Depends what you're looking at, and so the only way is you have to educate yourself. And you got to be smart. If you're going to buy a house, let's say I'm going to plan on buying a house, next 3 years, you might want to read up on houses, just to learn and read up on the neighborhoods and become very well informed. And this way, when you go look at the house, waste the realtor's time, right? How many houses have you shown certain people?
Gosh,
like 30 houses, right? And then they pick the wrong one to begin, So people should just get more educated before they take up your time. They should call you. I want a house tomorrow. Last year they should have thought about it. Like, I want to buy a house tomorrow, a year from now. Do a little bit of homework and a little research in the neighborhood and see if things work out. I mean,
you mentioned EIFS, and I'm going to go back to a story with you and I. What was the year? Was it not like 85 to 90 where that came on? So there's a whole bunch of houses in our area on the west side that started using EIFS and culture stone. And we didn't ever use that when we were built. My dad just didn't use it. He had an old school bricklayer. They didn't like to use it unless it was real stone. They didn't like the fake stuff. So I do remember it being put on. And when I see houses today built in that area, and I know that you would go in there and you'd look at it at the outside, no weep holes. This is an overhang underneath here, no foundation. And son of a bitch, you would go downstairs, you'd pull the insulation away,
right,
and it was rotted. And I would be like, what the hell, Marko? And you'd find it. And, then the people would be mad and it would be an issue. I remember there was a time that there was an issue on the whole front of the house was stone. And you said, this is going to be a problem. It's rotted all around here. Had to bring in a moisture tester.
Oh, yeah.
That they actually came out and drilled in the mortar and put probes in. Deal didn't go through.
That's probably Tom Gabba who did that.
I don't remember the name, but I know
two guys in count.
You're like,
yeah. They're the
And
only guys. They still do it. But you're absolutely right. It was the early versions.
the early versions
Yeah,
of it, because
let's not
it's
destroy a product.
early
Yeah.
versions.
I don't want to.
And I don't either, but it's
Yeah.
out there.
Mhm.
It's
The new stucco. Okay, the new stucco, synthetic stucco. That what we were talking about was the drive it class action lawsuits, insulated fascia
Yes.
systems, and the problem with those, and they were all over the country, not just
but it was bigger in the Carolinas and
Oh,
Florida
yeah,
than it
huge.
was here, because that's all they were using.
It was huge. But today they're putting up synthetic stucco differently, and they're using drainage planes. They're using drainage spaces, so it can drain, it can dry. It's different than it was back then.
But here's the real shame in all that. The trade was never taught or told or instructed by the manufacturer. This is how it should be put on.
Mhm.
There was never any here. If you're going to use this product, this is how we recommend it.
And that was the same with initial installers of Hardy board, initial
Yeah.
installers of culture stone. But today, you know what? These manufacturers today, a lot of you got to be certified now to put the like metal roof people got to know how to do the metal roofs. You know, now we still have a few things get by, sneak in. Like the most recent one was Chinese drywall. Okay,
I've never run into that thing.
Well, there's not that much of it up here, but we're talking lots of it down south. And this stuff causes corrosion of the electrical systems and the plumbing systems. You know, smells like rotten eggs. And so we still get new products. And, you know, I would have to say before using a new product, they never have a time to test it. Just like, you know, like the drug manufacturers, they make medicine, right? And then all of a sudden 3 years later, like, oh, don't take that no more. It does this, you know? And so it's always the older material have more time for a time testing period, you know? And today, like the new houses today, that they're going to be so expensive in the next 10 years that people aren't going to be able to afford to build them because the codes are getting stricter and stricter.
I have like done like a new construction circuit that I just wanted to see what was out there. So I went and visited all these homes, these builders, and walked their stuff after hour, and they are doing it. They are doing a good job. So I think a lot of the way that things have happened in the past, I was impressed with a lot of the stuff that was going on. One thing I want to bring up, and this is, you mentioned this in the book, that you are not a fan of, and when they're in homes, and they are in a lot of homes, are humidifiers. And you don't think they should be used at all, or can they be manageable? So I have a humidifier on my home, and from my time with you, I have shut it off, turned the screen on, turned the water, didn't use it until this year. My house was creaking like a son of a bitch as soon as it got cold out. So I had my furnace checkup. I'm like, can you check, see if it works, put a new filter on it? And I turned it on for like a week when we got super cold in drywalls. And it did the squeaks go away. But as you note, my inside is like a rainforest on my windows.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a lot of people that listen to this, there's a difference between humidifiers on furnace. Those are the big black boxes on the furnaces, or dehumidifiers, those things that we roll around and they get icy sometimes. Okay. So the humidifiers are, in most of the time, it's nice to have one if you need one, like you needed one during that time.
And it made a difference.
Yeah. But what happened was in certain neighborhoods, as the houses got tighter, and let's just move to Solon and Twinsburg, where attic mold was crazy because of all those vintage homes, the way they vented them in the new roofs, and they started using ridge vents. Okay. And some houses didn't have enough gable. They would use ridge vents, and they wouldn't have enough soffit vents. You have to have 50-50, or they would intermingle the vents. Bottom line was you'd have what's called, create too much humidity. And if you had thermal bypass, like an attic access that wasn't sealed or insulated, the moisture would go up into the attic and cause mold. And so most of these homes that had mold in their attic, we're talking thousands of these homes, okay? And that's where all the mold people became he came out of the woodwork. The guys that spray the paint, the guys that use bleach, the guys that use that special mold potion. Okay. They're coming out of the woodwork. You remember that 10, 15 years ago. They were doing the attic mold, and so the humidifier, when I went to these houses, because I would go in as a forensic inspector, and if there was 10 houses with attic mold, 8 of them were caused by humidifier. It was not when I got there. One of them was caused by a ventless fireplace or a ventless heater, okay? And then another one was caused by the others: a wet crawl space, vented crawl space, muddy crawl space, 50 plants in the house, whatever, a leak, okay? And so the humidifier was a damaging piece of a damaging apparatus that destroyed homes because people overuse them. They turn the thing on, turn it on, turn it off. And when they put them in, they have a summer, winter.
Yeah,
Turn on, summer, winter. It's like, no, turn that thing off. Matter of fact, in the winter is where you have condensation on windows. When you wake up in the morning, okay, and you've got condensation on your north corner window, your north side of your house, wait a minute, whoa, it could be 0 degrees, and you cooked pasta last night, fine, that's okay. But if you didn't cook pasta last night, and you didn't cook, and you're ordering all your food in, and you're not cooking anything, and you don't have pets and flowers and plants there, and your showers, you take 2-minute showers, not 50-minute showers, that humidity is coming from somewhere, okay? And the byproduct of combustion, an incomplete combustion, is carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide, okay, and water vapor. So you will go check out your furnace, see if your gas fireplace vent was closed, because that's going to cause humidity. Check that. Check the deadly things first, right? Make sure that and then go check your dryer vent. It might have a hole in it. Okay, that's a problem.
That's just something so simple.
But do it, and then go to your furnace. Oh, the humidifier. Turn that thing off. Okay, so number one is,
and these are all things
for condensation on a north window happens first. The bottom of the northeast corner house, first place you get it. That's where it's going to be at first. And the condensation is a bad thing. That means you screwed up or the house screwed up. Okay. Now, some people, like, I can a lot, so I may do pressure. I don't do pressure cooking in the house anymore because it causes a lot of humidity. So I do it outside. Okay. I use propane or whatever. But if you cook a lot, yes, you're going to get some condensation, but you'll know that. Like, oh yeah, we had spaghetti dinner and 10 people came over, and now I got condensation on my windows. Fine. But if you wake up, and there's condensation on your windows for a week straight, you better figure out what's going on. And one of the bigger items that causes it is a big problem. Slab houses that have ducts underneath the concrete. They got water in these things, especially houses built in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And even Schmidt, all his houses had ducts. And they started off with clay. Then they went to perforated pipe, which you can't clean, okay, corrugated pipe. And then they went to plastic pipe, and they're not sealed. And then you'll clean your gutters, the water gets in there, condensation on your windows. So condensation is a big thing. You can't overlook it.
And then also, Marco, to your point, there have been people that let that build up. And if you have, where I'm going with this, wood casement windows, rotted sash. And I could probably think of inspections that you and I had been on where that probably happened almost in every one. You'd call it out, and I'm like, oh, he's going to have a field day with this one. But it happens because nobody is looking at that. Oh, there's just condensation in my windows. No big deal.
This is kind of a forensic that you'll probably never find this anywhere. But okay, back to the condensation window, back to humidifier. Humidity, high humidity. Pella Pro Line windows, new windows. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So now we got the Pella Pro Lines, the new ones, right?
Yep.
They're class action windows, right? And they had Anderson started off with this, that they did with the plastic, the vinyl. So they decided to use metal. Well, metal is a vapor barrier. Think about that. A vapor barrier. It's glued onto the wood. So now you got high humidity in your house because your humidifier is on. You got new Pella windows. Everything's closed. Tight house, new house, no air exchanges. And all of a sudden, high vapor pressure means lots of moisture. Grains of moisture in the air means high humidity, high vapor pressure. It's going to want to go to low vapor pressure. It's going to try to get out. And as it's going through the house, it'll go through the house, through the walls. It goes through the window. And all of a sudden, there's that metal. The window case, the aluminum clad, it stops, and it's 0 degrees outside. Condensation forms on that. And all of a sudden, the glue breaks. The bond's gone, and then it rains. The rain hits the window, goes down, and rots out the window. That's how they rotted. That's the number one way those will fail. They rotted that way because of vapor pressure going to low vapor pressure, causing interstitial dew point, condensation on the skin of the pellet window, and then that would break the bond. So when the rain hit the window, ran down, it got behind and rotted out.
Are these like things that we're talking about now? The windows are these what you refer to as like the bones of homes, or have we?
That one's in the chapter called the skin.
The skin. Okay, the skin.
The skin. That's in the skin chapter.
Marko, let me ask you. So for those that read this book, if there's one chapter that the reader could take a lot off that they may not have known before, what would that topic and chapter be?
You know, I'd have to say the new one, the new problem today that doesn't really get a lot of press because, is downplayed. And it's called electrosmog. It's just a name. People understand it as electromagnetic fields, but you also have radio frequencies, you have electric fields, you have magnetism, you have there's different frequencies, okay? And so we don't really know enough about that. Just like, I don't know if you remember back.
Are we talking cell phones as well?
Oh, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a microwave and a radio frequency. And so this the newest thing. And just go back in time a little bit. Remember the doctors used to smoke Camel cigarettes? Oh, it's all great to smoke. And then 20 years later, it kills you, right?
Smoking may cause cancer.
Oh, what about all the chemicals? And they had the stillborn births with the moms taking this. And so this is just the next level of this because it's a frequency. And electrosmog is all these frequencies put together. So for example, a microwave, if the microwave leaks, that's you get microwaves, but it also creates electromagnetic fields. And they say, oh, the microwave is fine. Just stay 3 feet away. That's BS. I have testers. You stand 10 feet. I've been to microwaves 10 feet away and I'm getting 300 milligauss. That's a lot. Okay. And a lot of countries are actually looking at electrosmog. Like Netherlands, I think, has rooms where they have Faraday cages and places where you can go into a Faraday cage room and get away from all the frequencies. Schools can't be built in some of these countries that have radio towers. Okay. So you have all these things. And like in the book, I talk about light bulbs too. And light bulbs give off, like you think like LEDs, oh, they're great, they're clean. No, LEDs are in the wrong frequency. I mean, if you take LEDs and you put bugs and plants into them, they'll all die. LEDs aren't good. Mercury vapor, no good. I mean, compact fluorescent, no good. All these lights are different. The good light bulb was the incandescent. The Edison light bulb. You know why? Because it was in the right color range. You use incandescent light bulbs, then everything grows. Okay, and they got rid of that light bulb because it causes heat. It's polluting the air. It's killing frogs. And you know what? They got rid of every factory that made those. They still have them. You can still find them on a bottom shelf at Home Depot. Those are the only good light bulbs. People go to work and they have those. They have them 4-foot lights. And what they're doing is they're getting, okay, here's a great example. Go to Home Depot today and just look, and all of a sudden your vision gets messed up. And it's crazy because the lights are, they're humming, they're put the wrong frequencies. It's burning your brain apart, okay? It's killing you, okay? And so the incandescent, matter of fact, in Europe, they don't even make them anymore, but you're allowed to smuggle them in from Russia. So there's people, they smuggle incandescent light bulbs into people in Europe, okay? Because these lights are making people sick. And now the new lights in the freeways are driving, and they're blinding us.
Yeah.
And the car lights are blinding us. Isn't that good for you? Well, anyways, there's a whole section on this, on lights. Here's this one's kind of crazy. Mattresses, bed springs. You ever notice now people are buying those mattresses? They just open them up. No more bed springs, right? Gee, I wonder why there's less bed springs. Well, a mattress company hired me and they paid me a lot of money to do a study. And I did it. So I bought all these gauges and found out that most mattresses springs are magnetized. So if you take a camping compass and go to your mattress,
Come on.
Oh, do it. Just do it. And
I don't think I have a
You don't. That's good. And so I'll give you an example. And so the compass will move. I'm not saying that this is a problem. This is like, maybe 20 years from now we'll find out. And so I did this, and then I found out that when they make the coils, it would magnetize the springs. So then I did more studying, and I spent a year on this study. And by the way, they kind of gagged me on the report, paid me more money to shut up. Okay, because there's a mattress factory. They don't want people to know that bed springs are bad, right?
But why are you doing this study in the beginning?
Watch. They had a complaint call. I found out that, and this is hypothetical stuff, okay? But hey, it's worthy of the discussion, okay? In Japan, they have futons, no mattress springs, no problems with left breast cancer either. They have problems with thorax issues, but no. In America, we have high left breast cancer problems because people sleep. 70% of us sleep on the right side of our bed. We sleep on the right side. And if you take a mattress spring, which is exactly half of a wavelength, and throw some electromagnetic fields in it from improper wiring in your house, it magnifies it. You're sleeping on an antenna. So now the antenna magnetic flux goes right. If you're sleeping, you calculate out, hit your heart right here in breast. And we have high breast cancer. I'm not going to say magnetic springs cause left breast cancer or problems with hearts and things like that, but you don't have the same problem. Japan is sleeping on futons. And so back to this bed spring, that's just magnetics. But before that, we're talking about wiring in the home. So people in these big houses have two boxes, electrical boxes, and the sub panel isn't wired right because the grounds aren't separated. They're using neutrals and grounds on the same bar. That causes dirty voltage and electrical. And I've gone to houses in this town. Some people are sensitive. 5 to 8% of people are sensitized to frequencies. So I go in this house and I got a couple gauges and I stick it in. I go, hey, I go listen to a radio station 1100. In the room, I put a gauge in and I'm listening to the radio station. I go to another room, it's 1200. Some guy preacher, talking about Jesus.
Oh, come on.
Totally. And then I go to electrical box and I notice a hot neutral, and they got dimmer switches. Dimmer switches create high electromagnetic fields. You got your dirty voltage. We got stray voltage. We have electromagnetic fields. We have electric fields, and so like this chapter kind of teaches you, well, we don't know, but there's a lot of people getting brain cancer, all kind of new stuff. We don't know. Just like the camel smoker doctors back in the 50s, right? Now everyone died of lung cancer from smoking, right? Plus these kids now doing those vapey things. What are they, popping lung diseases, whatever? I mean, all this stuff comes out later. It's always too late. You want to be too late, No, you don't. And so what about your sleeping? You can't sleep at night because you got this thing, a charger next to you. That charger is putting out 30, 40, 50, 300 milligauss. Okay, now we're talking electromagnetic fields. And we got the router, because the router is right across the room, and we're getting hit with that frequency. We should turn that thing off at night, or we should not. We should hardwire the routers in our homes, okay? So that's putting it out. And now we're sleeping, and our pineal gland's like, oh, man, I can't sleep. There's little blue lights and red lights, and your brain knows there's little lights in the room. It's not dark, and a light comes across because your window doesn't have a shade, and the street light hits it, and your brain knows it's not sleeping. So the pineal gland doesn't produce melatonin, and when it doesn't produce melatonin, it doesn't kill the free radicals. It doesn't kill the free radicals. Your immune system goes down. Then you get in an elevator to go to a meeting, and somebody sneezes, and you get COVID. Is that fun?
I'm a hypochondriac to begin with, man. And you have just messed my head up.
Okay, very simple. Ready? Watch this.
Well, because I do all this shit.
Watch. Close the shade. Done. Blue lights, turn them sideways. You can't have little red blue lights flickering while you're sleeping. Remember you and me did that story for Channel 8?
Yes.
We did phantom voltage.
We phantom voltage.
Yeah.
In my house.
No phantom voltage. Get rid of that. Now, wait. Oh, the phone. Turn it off. You don't need to.
You just started doing that, Johnny, didn't you? You started putting your phone, and
move the charger.
It's right by my head.
No. Move the charger off the side and move that bed with the alarm clock that's got a motor off to the side. Make sure there's no power coming in from the back, from the house power coming into your house. Make sure that's on another wall. Move your bed if it isn't. Now move the bed across, right? Shut the lights off, and then turn off your router or change your router to a wired router. Now we're doing good. Now we can get even crazier. We could paint our room with electromagnetic field cancellation technology. We could build a Faraday cage underneath our mattress. We could buy what do they come? Tinfoil hats? They sell them. They're real. I have one.
Come on.
I have one. $50. It's a lead cap I don't wear that. But I'll tell you what, when I do wear it, which I go out to the country, my buddy has some land. I don't have any ear ringing and I could sleep. There's no service, no nothing. It's an 1840s cabin. Okay. No phone. Matter of fact, there's an outhouse there. That's how old this place is. At the bottom of the valley. My ringing in my ears, gone. But when I go to the top of the property, there's wires up there. And that's where we got to make our phone calls. The ringing comes back to my head. Frequency is something that we need to think about. I might write a whole book on it. Okay. Matter of fact, in my book, I tell you 2 books you should buy. It's called MF'd. Very good book to read if you want to learn about this stuff. You don't have to believe it, but remember I told you though, the doctors smoking Camel cigarettes didn't believe it either, did they?
No, the whole tobacco company.
You want to believe your authority? What about the people in Flint, Michigan? Oh, drink the water. The water's fine. They poisoned the whole city, man, with lead. They poisoned the whole city. Oh, it's good because you don't believe your authorities all the time.
Did you ever get called into Palestine with the train crash? I know you mention it in the book, but you didn't get called in to go do any kind of investigation?
No, because you know what? That I do talk about trains, and in the book I talk about that kind of thing.
I just mentioned it, but I was shocked that you never went there on your own.
No, I did. I had people call me that wanted me to go down that lived in the area, but what am I going to do? Take air tests? Take my particle counter and test the particle? Do VOC? It is. When that happens, you get the hell out. Okay, and you wait a while, and then maybe you come back. And here's a perfect example: the people that lived in Libby, Montana. That's where W.C. Grace mined vermiculite. It was a tremolite vein if they found, and that tremolite asbestos, smallest type of asbestos. Everybody worked in that mine is dead. All the people in that town 30 years later got all kind of cancer, and all the train track cities that the train drew because of drift got high levels of cancer. So you got to think about that kind of stuff. What you got to do is you got to think about. Anyway, I think I'm getting a little off. That chapter is the newest chapter.
That chapter again is probably the scariest in the book.
It is.
It is the scariest. You have just messed my head up.
That was kind of fun, though.
It is. It's interesting. I ask everyone this. All the people I have a conversation with is the name of my podcast is The Blueprint. What is Marko Vovk's blueprint?
Wow. Okay. Boy, I've never been asked that question before. What is my blueprint? What I think
of success in life.
I know one thing. I'm an engineer, right? And I know that when we have blueprints for a home, we get the blueprints. But then there's a change order, and we change a blueprint. And so my blueprint would be changing as I develop and get into my life and learn. So today's blueprint, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, might be I want to help people with their houses and tell them everything wrong. So that could have been my blueprint. That I want to help people. Today, I think at my age, we see a lot of our friends aren't doing very well. As we get older, we don't get as healthy. And my blueprint today is different. It's more about, sure, I want to help everybody. Okay. I want to tell people secrets and tricks to live. And that's why live longer. What's going to make us live? Oh, fixing our house is one thing that'll make us live longer, but so will foods and gardening. And so to me, it's about, I want to live longer. So my blueprint is, how am I going to make myself healthy? How am I not going to poison myself? How am I going to, I want to stay on this planet as long as we're only here for this segment of time. I want to stretch that to the end. And so my blueprint is staying alive, getting up every morning. And what am I going to do to better myself today? Sure. In the process, I want to help. I want to help the collective. I want to help the world, tell them, hey, you're doing this wrong, but I don't want to be the preacher either. People have their own minds, their own critical thinking. Everyone has individualism. And so my blueprint is to wake up in the morning and to be healthier the next day, or try to stay healthy. Also to help people. And that's what this book was about. And there'll be another version of this book, and I'll probably put photos in it next time and make it bigger. And you know how people do that, the second version. But this is pretty much a good catalyst. You read this, you know what's going on. I mean, if you were a home inspector today and want to be a home inspector, you don't have to go to home inspection school. Just read this book, and the rest is just going to fall into place, you know. And so, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, and I I I get what you're saying. I actually really like what you're saying. It's you change over time, and everything changes, and I get what you're saying because my thoughts, beliefs, and the way I am now, it's not like what the 20,
No,
30-year-old,
absolutely not.
40-year-old was. So you evolved. You've
Yes.
gotten better over time.
Yeah.
You can change your opinions.
Yeah.
But Marko, again, I want to plug your book, Fix Your Toxic Home and Live Longer.
Yes.
I highly, highly recommend anyone in either the business, home inspector, a real estate agent, a new homeowner, a homeowner that's had their home forever. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was so well written, and I think there's a lot that you can take from this book and learn. I know, and I told you this earlier. I had so many inspections with you. You made me a better agent. You taught me a lot about the business and what to look for. I know you're known as the deal killer. You're misunderstood, and it's a shame because you did scare people. You're just you were too smart. But I'm glad you never changed. You never went away from it. And great read. I'm so happy for you. I think it's going to be a huge success. Where can they get the book?
Oh, right now it's on Amazon.
Okay,
and
that's where I got it.
Yeah, and you could get in different versions. I don't have. I'm going to have an Audible version. I've got a guy doing the Audible right now, so there'll be an Audible version too. Because
it's not going to be you.
No, my wife told me it should be me.
It should be you.
And
as I read the book,
yeah,
it was your voice that was. So I think you need to.
Yeah,
I really do. That would be my recommendation.
I might do it. But I got a guy doing it right now, and
it's
and
not.
You know, a lot of people told me you should do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
I'd be more passionate if it was me.
100%.
Yeah.
You're, and there is humor in the book, and you will get that across the way you.
Mm-hmm.
I love the stories, and it just wouldn't resonate.
Yeah.
The same if it's not you. So
you're absolutely right. And you know what? I may decide to do that. You know, I already took the hit on doing it, so we'll see. We'll see. You know, life is just one big experiment, right?
Sure, that's great.
It's an experiment, and everything we do is an experiment. Everything we do all day, it's just a big experiment, and we're living in it. And you know what? You learn from it every day. We get stronger, we get smarter, and our blueprint changes.
I like that. Look at you. Marko, why don't you plug your YouTube channel, which is fantastic. And
Okay.
and if you haven't seen your videos, and how long have you been making YouTube videos?
Well, you know, I used to be more passionate on the YouTube videos when there weren't that many people doing them.
You were way ahead of your time.
So like my videos that are 15, 14, 10 years old, those are a lot of home stuff. And a lot of stuff that's in the books in those videos. And of course, I wasn't a movie producer, so I kind of made it myself, you know.
There are a lot of green screens.
Yeah, and so I bet you. And then I started getting, I started like doing some new stuff. Like I'm into like when I was going across the country, I decided I want to go look at abandoned buildings, and I went to 300 of these places. I went to caves, abandoned mental institutions. I mean, really crazy stuff all over the country. And so I made a lot of videos on. I went into old prisons. Like at Juliet, I broke into that prison and spent 8 hours in a prison, going through the tunnels and taking photos. It's an abandoned prison, and I just was fascinated by how they build homes, or how they build construction, how things were deteriorated, forgotten, left alone and abandoned. So I had a whole bunch of that going on, 10 years ago. And then I started doing quicker videos because I realized that, I monetized them and I used to make some money, from ads and stuff. And then it just, now if people don't, they have shorter attention spans. So they invented this thing called what? Shorts, TikToks and stuff. So now you got 15 seconds. So I've been lately for the last 2 years, I'm like, I came here 20 minutes early. I was in the parking lot. I said, let me do 2 videos. I made 2 videos in the parking lot. Yeah, I made them for a minute each.
That's great.
Yeah, I just went live. I went like this. I went.
What,
And I
what's,
said, okay, let me do a video on that. And I started talking about it. And I say, buy the book, 2 videos. Yep.
what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Oh, Cleveland Marko
Cleveland Marko.
with a K.
And you're still doing inspections.
Yeah.
How do they reach you?
They call me. You can just Google me, Marko.
Google Marko.
Yeah. And I do a couple other, I do also across the country. One of my biggest things is call Marko with a question. Oh, I do this.
You mentioned that in the book.
Oh yeah. And these people call me. They're like, I got this problem in my house, and I've had 10 people come over and so they call, it's a small fee. And then I talk to them, I interview them for about 10 minutes. And then I tell them what's wrong with their house. And I've had tons of calls. Like people call me. The other day, a guy called me from West Virginia. He goes, man, my creosote, my house, it stinks. And I'm just like, okay. So I found out later that somebody built his house with railroad ties. They took a,
Got that in the book.
Yeah, I was giving an example because that one's in the book. And that one I kind of added. And basically I said, here's how we're going to fix it. We're going to tear your house down. Let's just cause negative pressure in your crawl space. We'll take an exhaust fan, a radon mitigation system, and vent it out. So we'll be sucking air in and out, not out and in, right? And so the odor went away. And so people call me about that. And so I do a lot of that. And they can call me just, if you just Google Marko, MarkoVovk, I got a website, www.houseinvestigations.com. And I also have a couple landing pages, fixyourtoxichome.com, 924-TEST, like test your house, 216. And so it's easy to find me. If you Google my name, it's coming up on that first Google search, Marko, MarkoVovk. And I don't really push the name ambassador so much, but that comes up. So they can get a hold of me that way.
To be 100% honest with you, I forgot until you mentioned that was the name of your company. I just call Marko. Yeah. So Marko, again, I want to thank you. I haven't seen you in a while. I have enjoyed this. I want you back on a regular basis because we haven't even touched the surface on stuff. Yeah. And you're again, thank you. This has been so enjoyable. I wish you the most success with this book, and I'm so proud of you. And what an accomplishment, Marko.
Hey, I want to thank you for having me on. Okay, and it's kind of fun. I like doing this kind of stuff. It's kind of like doing a live YouTube video,
it is.
Kind of, and so I really appreciate it. And if you want me to come back anytime you want, I mean, absolutely. I'm not flying to Mars anywhere soon, So,
thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to follow us on social media at MDV The Blueprint on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post a ton of great content. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you never miss out on an episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.